Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video is going to continue to focus on current events and connecting the dots and understanding real history and trying to correct fake history, which most of us have been mind restructured, brainwashed with by rinse and repeat, mass media, television, radio, fake book authors, and of course the private bankers who finance the fraud and the cover-up. For every fraud, there is always a private banker. You cannot have a major fraud without a private banker. You cannot have a terrorist attack without a private banker. You cannot have a war without a private banker. You cannot have a cover-up without a media that's paid by the private banks through their money laundering facilities, which are known as endowment funds, art galleries, universities, prestigious universities, and hedge funds. You know, like the ones that created FTX. Like those. Right. Like those. Remember, if you watch my videos, they're about money laundering. Money laundering is synonymous with private banking, meaning secret banking, meaning the concealment of the sources and uses of money. That's money laundering. And most money laundering has to do with unethical, immoral, illegal acts of violence, fraud, larceny, grand larceny, and, as we learned from my previous videos, murder by banking bayonet, or also known as NATO forces One World Order Policeman for the World, circa 1964 M7, 7 for 7 inches, double-edged, carbon steel, no nonsense, will not bend, will not break, goes through bones, goes through your sternum, bayonet, the same kind used at the My Lai massacre under Operation Phoenix on March 16, 1968, and then used again in CIA military industrial complex Benedict Canyon to murder private banker Abigail Folger, age 25, 28 bayonet strikes to her, including going through her sternum into her heart, 28 stab wounds that were 1.5 to 6 inches deep. She had another couple of dozen, defensive wounds that were not fatal on her wrists, on her cheek. Her cheek was slashed. That didn't kill her. What killed her was the bayonet strikes to her stomach, to her chest, to her back, and that's what were fatal. Anyway, that's all been concealed because the media and the clandestine forces decided to blame it on Charles Scott, who they renamed Manson, and Susan Atkins, who appears in a repeat performance for the FTX scandal. You have Charlie Manson as played by Sam Bankman-Fried, who went to the same school that Patricia Hearst went to. Right? Just a mile away from where Charles Ng went to school. The serial killer from the United States Marines that worked with Leonard Lake up in Jim Jones's area, up there in CIA, Mendocino County. Yeah, he went to school at the Notre Dame Academy, which is walking distance to the Crystal Geyser Upland School, where Sam Bankman-Fried went to school years after Patricia Hearst had gone there. And years after Paul Pelosi flipped his sports car, killing his older brother David. So you never hear the name David Pelosi because he's dead. He's dead because his neck brace killed him. Never mind that his younger brother, Paul, flipped the car upside down on a very dangerous road called Skyline Boulevard in San Mateo County. The same county that murdered Erin Valente, age 33, at 2500 Sand Hill Road. Her last appointment, last place to be seen alive, 2500 Sand Hill Road. One parking lot away from where Doug Leone of Sequoia Capital capitalized FTX at 2800 Sand Hill Road. Sequoia Capital, a company founded by Don Valentine in 1972 from the Bronx, New York. I always like to include my New York viewers into my stories because you can't escape any of these clandestine stories without Manhattan, Queens, the Bronx, the Yonkers, New Rochelle, Mount Vernon, where for Doug Leone, Long Island. Let's not forget Paul Castellano, and let's not forget Michele Sindona, the president of the Franklin National Bank. Franklin National Bank. Does anyone get that joke? Named after the Magic Castle on Franklin Avenue in Hollywood, where Ken Franklin, who appears in the form of Jack Cassidy in several Columbo episodes, Ken Franklin murders his partner in Murder by the Book. And he also appears as a magician in The Great Santini, who presents his illusion, his acts of illusion at the Magic Castle, which is next door to the Dolby Theater, where Will Smith did the bitch slap with Chris Rock. That was a current event, this 2022. That was a current event. And then a few weeks after that, we had the Lindsay Pearlman murder in Runyon Canyon, which is walking distance from the Dolby Theater and the Will Smith bitch slap. It's walking distance to the West Hollywood. And she's found dead as a doornail in her car with her radio running, parked outside the gate into the Runyon Canyon Park on a steep hill. That's a murder. It was ruled mysterious death. That's a current event. That's 2022. Man, oh man. Okay, so in my video today, I'm going to explain how concealment works. There are many ways that you can change the subject. If you haven't noticed watching my videos, I'm trying to weave in a lot of things that actually are relevant to explaining the FTX scandal, but it may not appear to be so. But look what the media is doing, right? They're using Jim Cramer to pump and dump FTX on CNBC and his mad money, bald-headed, Goldman and Slacks trained, Harvard University indoctrinated Jim Cramer, the Mad Hatter, without a hat. And he's going to recommend FTX, as a strong buy. And then it tanks into oblivion, after 3 years of operation with a Chapter 11 federal bankruptcy filing, which could never happen unless Douglas Leone personally gave the thumbs up for that paperwork, because his company, Sequoia Capital, wired over $213 million to the FTX scam in 2019, just before Aaron Valente went bye-bye at 2500 Sand Hill Road. Just before she went bye-bye, FTX was born, right? And 3 years later, FTX was destroyed in a financial terrorism event portrayed on the media, which makes it a clandestine services authorized psychological event, a psyops, a psyops. That's what FTX is. For anybody that wants to escape the reservation, get off, make a jailbreak, escape the FEMA camp that we call the United States of America. You think you're going to conduct business without a bank? Think again. You French revolutionary peasants, you don't do that. Else we'll bring out the bayonets. Banker bayonets. Banker bayonets. Who do you think funds the military budget? I mean, the government has no money. They're broke. They're insolvent. So it's got to be done by a hedge fund or a bank who purchases those treasury bonds, which make bayonet production possible. All right. Aaron Valente, I think, said it most eloquently and said it best. Aaron Valente's last words to her mother. I actually had a viewer say that this was just poppycock, and I couldn't verify this, but there are numerous interviews where Aaron Valente's mother said that Aaron spoke these words. So if you want to call Aaron Valente's mother a pathological liar, go right ahead. Don't call me a liar. I'm repeating what her mother said, and it's in numerous different news sources. So perhaps it's not true, but then that's like saying, that you believe in COVID masking, all right? So don't get mad at me. I'm just the messenger, and this is my life being shot at because I'm giving you a message that maybe the Beatles didn't write all their songs, right? Boy, I really annoyed a few people with that one, that the Tavistock Institute might have had something to say about the lyrics of Paul McCartney and John Lennon's songs. You think? I mean, they're running the show. Paul McCartney's not running the show. Brian Epstein's not running the show. John Lennon is not running the show. CBS and RCA Victor are running the show through EMI. And they control the radio waves, and they control the Ed Sullivan show. So you're not taking your silly little mop top act onto United States television audiences through the Ed Sullivan, CBS, evil eye, Masonic evil eye. You're not going on that show unless the Tavistock Institute and British intelligence agrees. That's how the world really works. I know a lot of people don't want to believe that. I understand that. Okay, so why don't you go out and see if you can pick up some FTX cryptocurrency real cheap. But anyway, Unwillingly's last words were, it's all a game. It's a thought experiment. We're in the matrix. That really sums it up. But to drive it home, you should really understand, for my young people especially, this is not the first time this has happened. And before Aaron Valente said it, William Shakespeare wrote it. William Shakespeare, you might remember him, or maybe you don't. I don't know if you read William Shakespeare in school anymore. They may have deleted him. Anyway, I'm looking for my William Shakespeare quote. Okay, here it is. Before Aaron Valente said those three sentences, it's all a game, it's a thought experiment, we're in the matrix. Before she said that, all right, and before Timothy Leary, a CIA career soldier who went to West Point Academy on the Hudson River, before Timothy Leary spoke those CIA scripted words, tune in, turn on, drop out in 1967, before Timothy Leary uttered those crazy words, William Shakespeare wrote, all the world's a stage. And I will read the quote. This is a phrase begins from a monologue from William Shakespeare's pastoral comedy, As You Like It. And it was spoken by the melancholy Jacques in Act 2, Scene 7, line 139. The speech compares the world to a stage and life to a play, and catalogs of the 7 stages of a man's life, sometimes referred to as 7 ages of a man. The actual text reads as follows. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. His acts begin in 7 stages. At first, the infant, meowing and puking in the nurse's arms. And then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like a snail, unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow. Then a soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth, and then the justice, in fair round belly, with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of a formal cut, full and wise saw and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side. His youthful hose, well saved, a world too wide for his skunk skank and his big manly voice, turning again toward childish trouble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all, this ends this strange eventful history, is second childness and mere oblivion, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. I'll paraphrase that. That's the meta-universe. That's a fake world of simulated reality. That's what they're saying. And man's folly of believing in it. That they believe in fakeness. And that they shun reality. Okay? Now, people, that's 100% true. And you know, my audience now, I have 13 to 18-year-olds watching my videos. I have like 600 of them. And then I have 16% of my viewing audience is age 18 to 24. And another 12% is age 25 to age 34. Which means that the young people now constitute about 38% of my total viewing audience, which is equivalent to my over 65-year-olds. So I couldn't be more delighted that I've got a barbell where I've got the future. The future of tomorrow is the young people, and then I have the wisdom of the mature people over 65. They have the most knowledge and personal experience. The young people have the most energy and the most to live for, but they lack experience. So when you put the older people and the younger people together, you create a perfect synergy where the young people can be coached, mentored, educated properly, where they're not going to get that in a fancy university. You're going to be indoctrinated there. Our elementary schools are completely infiltrated. Our high schools are a joke. I mean, they're an unfunny joke. Anytime you have an educator wearing a face diaper or hiding behind a plexiglass shield, like they did at banks, like they did at schools, like they did at courthouses, that's a cult ritual, people. That's a cult ritual. It's a COVID cult. So you should shun that because they've been proven wrong. And I knew they were going to be proven wrong from the moment that they foisted that fraud on us. But anyway, that's what we have. We have a fake justice system. We have a fake land of the law, the rule of law. There's no rule of law in the United States of America. We're living under admiralty law, under maritime law. That means we're all on a VLCC, very large crude carrier. And some of us maybe have first class, staterooms, but most people are living in the sludge. A very large crude carrier is an oil tanker, if you haven't figured that out. And the captain of the VLCC, the very large crude carrier, the captain is in charge. And we follow orders or people die. They either die by getting thrown into the brig, which is down below the crude, or they get tossed overboard into the sea. Maritime law. That's where you're considered guilty until proven innocent, but there's no due process, so your ability to prove your innocence is zero. So you're always guilty if I say so. That's admiralty law, right? So do as you're told and zip it. You take an oath of obedience, number one, an oath of secrecy, number two, and then world mission. In other words, we're going to go on a little journey where we're going to imprison the entire planet, and you're going to go right along with it. That's if you're a medical doctor. That's if you're a lawyer. That's if you're a judge at a superior courthouse. That's if you're a superior court judge. That's if you're an appellate judge. That's if you're an executive at any one of the hundreds of large corporations in the world. That's if you work at a bank or a hedge fund or if you're an administrator of a Medicare-funded hospital, or that's if you're in charge of an endowment fund or a hedge fund that works with a bank but pretends not to work for a bank. And then if you're in charge of the charity or big, tax-deductible endowment funds, we all follow orders or people die. Or their children get whacked. That's the reality. I've just simplified it for you. Is there going to be justice on the FTX crypto scandal? Well, let me put it this way. No! No, there isn't. No. Was there justice for the 504 women and children that were murdered at My Lai in Vietnam on March 16th, 1968? No, there wasn't. No one was arrested. Nobody was arraigned. No. In the end, they blamed it on William Calley, but then Richard Nixon pardoned him. So nothing there. Nothing to see. Keep moving. There's nothing to see here, people. Just keep moving. Was there justice in the Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger, Lena LaBianca murders? No, they convicted the wrong people. The actual killers, the soldiers that were wielding the M16 rifles with the M7 bayonet attachment, nobody knows who they are. They're gone. I'm assuming that they're in continental Europe. They flew into a NATO airbase and then disappeared. They're probably all alive to this day. It's just they got away with it because they're exempt. They're part of maritime law. And William Shakespeare and Aaron Valente and in a perverted way, Timothy Leary, their quotes, tune in, turn on, drop out, as perverted as that is our society. Everyone's tuning into steroid football and thinking that the players don't take drugs. They're tuning into NBA basketball and think it's a pure product when the games can be fixed and rigged easily and that the players are all on amphetamines and drugs. And if you don't believe me, why don't you ask Timothy Leary, or, well, he's dead now, but, the people that worked in Haight-Ashbury, they even had a CIA program that was called the ARP, Amphetamines Research Program. That's where they gave amphetamines to everybody, including college students. They got amphetamines. So apparently, little Caroline Ellison uses amphetamines, according to the fake media. The Susan Atkins lookalike. That is a Charlie Manson, Susan Atkins casted television show. The Sam Bankman-Fried, Caroline Ellison freak show. You notice if you're talking about Sam Bankman or you're talking about little Caroline Ellison, who would have been 24 years old when this scam was put together, little Stanford University graduate. Yeah, look to Stanford. Maybe you should blame Stanford University. They like to brag about what a prestigious school they are. They're a disgrace. They're owned by the United States Navy, okay? That's who owns Stanford. They get military grant money, okay? They are owned by the banks. They're not an independent organization. They had George Shultz die on their property, member of the Hoover Institute think tank. Think tank? You mean propaganda do think tank? So my point is that it's all a complete simulation of reality. There are no leaders, okay? We have fake leaders. They're not real leaders. The university administrators of schools like the University of California or Harvard, Princeton, MIT, Stanford, who did I leave out? MIT, Stanford, Princeton, Yale. That's who I left out. Notre Dame, Georgetown University, Loyola Marymount, University of San Francisco. They're fake leaders. They're just following a script. They're all following the exact policies, right? As are all chief executive officers, chief financial officers, chief operating officers, executive vice presidents, and all the corporations. They have one world order, one policy under maritime law, and they all do what they're told, or else people get whacked. I understand that. I get it. It's a disgrace. They should all resign. They should resign and let someone else take over their fake job. They have a fake job that pays a lot of money. And then you have fake politicians like, let's go down the list. Andrew Cuomo, who was a fake governor for the state of New York. Gavin Newsom, who is a current fake governor of the state of California, the CIA state of California. Before that, we had Ronald Reagan. He was president of the Screen Actors Guild. He was the fake governor of the state of California for a while. During the peace riots, the media called the conscription, the kids protesting mandates regarding draft into the army. The media renamed it peace riots, as if the kids were rioting for peace, which is complete bombacity, mendacity. Then Ronald Reagan went on to become, very television sophisticated president of the United States for 8 years, and even had a phony fake assassination attempt in his first year in office with a phony fake friend of the CIA George H.W. Bush family, John Hinckley. And they even weaved, Jodie Foster into the story. She went to Yale. So she's part of the program too. Jodie Foster, who married Ellen DeGeneres' ex-lesbian girlfriend, which I'm going to call a fake girlfriend. And then that was followed the Anne Heche, I'm not really gay girlfriend, Anne Heche, with the breakup bender weekend in Fresno County off of Highway 33, where she has a spaceship and she's taking ecstasy and she's going to take us all up to see God in her spaceship. Brought to you by ABC, Disney-owned fake news. ABC News reported on the breakup bender weekend. There is not a shred of evidence that Anne Heche was drunk. There's no evidence that she was on ecstasy. She was not institutionalized at the hospital in Fresno. She was there a couple hours and then got on a plane and flew to Toronto, Canada, where she directed Denzel Washington in a film. So it didn't look like she was having a breakup bender weekend at all. Looks like that was just made up, right? That they lied. Now, was the relationship with Ellen DeGeneres as fake as the breakup bender weekend? Yeah, I think so. I don't believe it. I think it's completely fake. I think Ellen DeGeneres' relationships with lesbian partners is as real as Anne Heche's fake car crash, okay? That never happened. There was no fiery car crash. It's impossible. You couldn't get a Formula One race car driver to reenact that fake crime over a crowned road into a 40-foot hedgerow, into a Army-owned clandestine services dump of a house that hadn't been remodeled in 70 years. It's staged. It's a Hollywood joke. An unfunny Hollywood joke. So we live under maritime law, admiralty law. All the judges are phony and fake. They don't know the Constitution of the United States because they don't follow the Constitution. They don't even know what the Bill of Rights is. They wouldn't be able to recite the Bill of Rights. If you paid them $5,000, they wouldn't be able to do it. And before we had the FTX scandal, we had the Charles Keating Lincoln Savings and Loan scandal, which really emanated in Los Angeles. Then the office got moved from the county of Los Angeles to Orange County to the city of Irvine, which is not too far from Disneyland. Anyway, then it moved to the state of Arizona, and that's how we implicate John McCain, the only Republican senator who was part of the Keating Five. The Keating Five were 5 senators, 4 of which were Democrats, and 1 was John McCain, the phony fake Republican senator. And just to be, real accurate when I talk like this, I know it offends people. There's no such thing as the Democratic Party. There's no such thing as the Republican Party. Those are made up psychops is what those are. If you believe in it, hey, why don't you go buy some more cryptocurrency with FTX, okay? Because you got punked. All right, so the Keating Five, which stands for Charles Keating, and I believe he was Jesuit educated. Anyway, Alan Cranston, Democrat senator from California. Dennis DeConcini, Democratic senator from Arizona. John Glenn, first man in space, Democratic senator from Ohio. John McCain, Republican senator from Arizona. And Donald Regal, Democratic senator from Minnesota. No, Michigan. The Keating Five were 5 United States senators, and they were all accused of corruption in 1989, igniting a major political scandal as part of the larger savings and loan crisis. Now, for you young people, there used to be a financial services industry known as savings and loan, and it was specifically set up so that people could purchase houses or build houses. So you typically had builders of homes, construction companies would chummy up to or open a savings and loan bank to raise money to do fractional bank credit so that people could buy their new homes or also buy existing older homes. My point is that it's part of the banking system. It has been done away with really after the Keating scandal of the Lincoln Savings and Loan. It went the way of the dodo bird. And what's going to happen to the United States dollar? It's going to eventually go the way of the dodo bird, but I guess not today. But soon it will. And it's going to go the way of FTX, because FTX has gone the way of the dodo bird. And if you don't believe me, why don't you call over to Sequoia Capital and ask for Doug Leone. He seems to know. He authorized $213 million be sent over to FTX. Now listen, people, Doug Leone could personally bail out all the people who lost money in FTX. He's worth over $6 billion, and he's an employee. He didn't found Sequoia Capital. Don Valentine founded it. And Don Valentine died 13 days after Aaron Valente's dead body was discovered in 2019. Aaron Valente's body was found in the back of a car in Almaden Valley near the Almaden Municipal Golf Course. And she was found on October 12th, 2019. And Don Valentine went bye-bye on October 25th, 2019. So you can't ask Don Valentine, founder of Sequoia Capital, who was alive when FTX was created through his company. But you can ask Doug Leone, because he's still there, and he's worth $6 billion, and he's been working there for 34 years. How would you like to have a job where you made over $260 million a year every single year for 34 years? Does that appeal to you? Because that's what you're talking about with Doug Leone. He would have to make a minimum of $260 million a year and pay about $80,000 of income taxes to get anywhere close to $6.1 billion. God knows if he has trusts that pay him money too. I bet he does. And that's not part of the $6 billion. So he may have more than that. That's probably the minimum that he has. And, again, he's not going to be subject to an audit. As Sequoia Capital, you won't be able to read all the minutes from all the finance and investment committee minutes that they discuss Sam Bankman and Caroline Ellison. You don't think that they know what clothes in their wardrobe that they wear? If you see the clothes that Sam Bankman wore on television with his shorts and cutoffs, that's deliberate by design. That's like the Charlie Manson wardrobe at the murder trial. That's not an accident. The hairstyle, that's not an accident. That's deliberate on purpose. They're trying to paint a picture in your brain that this is a mad scientist, math genius, physics degree from MIT, or that little Caroline on amphetamines, polyamorous little Caroline. Does she even go on dates? I mean, she doesn't really look like she has time, and she hasn't been to the salon, it looks like, in a long time. And like she's a mastermind from Stanford University. I mean, is that the best image that Stanford University can project on television? It's a disgrace. It's a complete disgrace. Stanford University, associated with Cisco Systems, Sun Microsystems, Cypress Semiconductor, Hewlett Packard, Sequoia Capital, associated with success stories like Apple Computer, Steve Jobs plunking him out of De Anza Community College, turning him into a rock star for Apple Computer. Are you kidding? The guy didn't graduate from university. Creating Oracle Sales Corporation, not Oracle. Oracle database was created at Ampex Corporation across the street, paid by the CIA, who bought and created Oracle database. But the Sales Corporation is Oracle. And that was brought to you by Don Valentine's Sequoia Capital, the people who brought you FTX cryptocurrency. They brought you Google, they brought you YouTube, they brought you Zoom, they brought you LSI Logic. You telling me that he can't wire over $1 billion of love to help the redemptions, which, by the way, you don't have to do $1 billion to calm people's nerves. If you just sent another 200 million, which they already sent, then people would, once they saw that redemption window was open, then they would not ask for their cryptocurrency redemption back. They wouldn't ask for their fake fiat money back because they would keep their cryptocurrency knowing that the system was intact because of Don Valentine and Doug Leone backing up Sam Bankman-Fried, the front man. He's the Charlie Manson. The reason that you have a Charlie Manson and a Susan Atkins, age 21, with a 9-month-old baby boy in the media is so that we don't discuss the military M7 bayonet that murdered all of the victims in Benedict Canyon, and then over at Waverly the next day, which, by the way, all the homes around the Waverly site are controlled by the CIA. And all the homes around the Sharon Tate and Abigail Folger murder are all controlled by the CIA and the Army military industrial complex. They built all those homes, all right? And we have a Catholic order. Do you know that next to Lino LaBianca and Rosemary LaBianca, right next door to their mother's house, it's Lino LaBianca's mother, Karina's home. It's not his home. Lino LaBianca and Rosemary lived in the Walt Disney Mansion on Woking Way. That's right, I said Woking Way. That's what I said. They lived in that mansion for 7 years. They didn't live in that little 1,500 square foot murder house. They lived in a 6,188 square foot, 5-bedroom palace under the Hollywood sign in Griffith Park. That's where they lived. But they sold it, so they moved. Okay, the Immaculate Heart of Mary is the Roman Catholic devotional name of the convent that is on the north side of the Lino LaBianca crime scene. That means it's off limits to the public, at 8 o'clock in the morning on that Saturday morning when they were murdered. That would be, Sunday morning, I guess, is when they were found. They were actually discovered Sunday evening at 10 p.m. So they were murdered, I believe, Sunday morning, August 10th, probably around between 8 and 9 a.m. in the morning, adjacent to the convent of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, a Roman Catholic devotional order. Do you know that the icon symbol for the Immaculate Heart of Mary is a red heart with an M7 bayonet puncturing through it, exactly like Abigail Folger heart was punctured by this weapon? That is the icon and the devotional symbol for the Immaculate Heart of Mary, adjacent to the Rosemary and Lino LaBianca property. On the other side, you have two homes, both controlled by the CIA through Armenian owners, one of whom is the mother and one is the son, who is the lawyer for the Straight Satan's Motorcycle Club, which sells and distributes CIA drugs, which Lino LaBianca is the private banker for. Anyway, that should help you understand why Lino was murdered. He was quitting, resigning. He was moving to San Diego. He was in the process of purchasing a horse farm in Vista, North San Diego County, 2 hours away, approximately 100 miles distance. But when you add the traffic in, it will push a drive that would normally take about 90 minutes, and it's going to add 30 minutes minimum to your drive. So you can't run a private banking operation for CI drugs and run 6 grocery stores plus a wholesale produce business and 7 provisional homes for CIA employees, operatives, from 2-hour distance. You've got to be closer to the Eye of the Devil, right? A movie that Sharon Tate appeared in for MGM Studios. MGM comes in and out of these stories all the time. MGM is involved with Judy Garland. That's right, I said Judy Garland from The Wizard of Oz. Judy Garland starred with Frank Morgan. That was a film produced by MGM, released on August 26, 1939. Judy Garland was later murdered in central London at age 47. Judy Garland, whose real name is Frances Ethel Gumm. Frances Ethel Gumm of Lancaster. This is before Edwards Air Force Base was built. This is before Palmdale and the Lockheed Skunk Works were installed. This is before China Lake was really developed. Judy Garland, whose real name was Frances Ethel Gumm, was moved to Lancaster. And it wasn't until MGM signed her in 1935 that her name was changed to Judy Garland. She went from Frances Ethel Gumm to Judy Garland. And they completely exploited her and used that little girl who appeared in The Wizard of Oz, which is a movie about following the yellow brick road, which is follow the banks, follow the authority. If you go off the yellow brick road, the Wicked Witch of the East or the Wicked Witch of the West, which is the Sacred Heart Convent, which is not too different than the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Sacred Heart Convent was created after the French Revolution or during the French Revolution. I'm going to say during the French Revolution in North France in 1800. And the Immaculate Heart of Mary was established in 1877, after our gold rush psychops. And it was established throughout the world as well. And they happen to be adjacent to the crime scene of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, which I don't think that's a coincidence at all. You want to keep the looky-loos away from your bayonet murders, right? Because people may scream, so you don't want witnesses. So you always secure the perimeter. Judy Garland, Sharon Tate signed a deal with the devil in 1962, exactly the same time that Paul McCartney and John Lennon and the Beatles signed a deal with RCA Victor and CBS Columbia Records through EMI. And so essentially Paul McCartney and John Lennon were controlled by the same invisible hand that Sharon Tate was, which was the same hand that controlled Louis B. Mayer, and MGM controlled Judy Garland. And guess what? Jean Harlow was controlled by Howard Hughes initially, and he featured her in a movie called Hell's Angels. Now that's important because Jean Harlow was given provisional housing at 9820 Easton Drive, where her much older husband, Paul Byrne, whose real name is Paul Levy, a Jewish man from New York, he's 42 years old, and he got shot in the back of the head with a .38 pistol and killed in that home. And then his 23-year-old wife, Jean Harlow, who was a bigger star than Joan Crawford, Greta Garbo, and Norma Shear. Jean Harlow was big time at age 23. She dies of kidney infection, if you believe that story, because I don't believe that story at all. And she was working for MGM. They took her from Howard Hughes, which went on to become, Hughes Aircraft. It was Hughes Tool Corporation, then Howard Hughes Motion Pictures, and then casinos, and Hollywood Engineering, Social Engineering, and then Aerospace Technology, along with Lockheed Martin and Northrop. Not to mention General Dynamics. So Marilyn Monroe actually was controlled by CBS Columbia, which also controlled Sharon Tate, because her contract was split between MGM and CBS Television, Columbia Records, Columbia Pictures. So you have the gist of what I'm trying to tell you is Hollywood is a military operation, okay? Ronald Reagan initially went into the Army. He was sent to Fort Mason in San Francisco, which is in close proximity to the Presidio Army Base, which was home to Sharon Tate's father, which was home to Michael Aquino, which is home to a bioweapons lab that was part of Letterman Hospital. That was home to Nancy and Paul Pelosi from 1969 on. That was home to the last Zodiac killing next door to the Presidio. That is home to the Sacred Heart Convent at 2222 Broadway, which is adjacent to the Presidio Army Base. So you have, and you also have the Sacred Heart Convent in Atherton, which is off Valparaiso, Menlo Park, which is in close proximity to where the Sequoia Capital that created the FTX and Apple Computer and Cisco Systems and all the Stanford hatched companies with, as we call them, all the world is a stage, and the men and women are just actors upon the stage. That's Stanford University. That's Harvard University. That's Yale University. That's Princeton University. I mean, Oliver Stone went to Yale twice, and his name's Silverstein. So I don't know that I helped explain anything in my, how long it's been here since we've been talking. 44 minutes. I'm going to cut it off now, but I want you to know that Erin Valente, with her words of it's all a game, it's a thought experiment, we're in the Matrix, and Timothy Leary's words, tune in, turn on, drop out, and William Shakespeare's words, first spoken, all the world is a stage and men and women are just players upon that stage. That's the meta universe. So please don't take FTX too seriously. It's one of 1,000 financial scandals. There will be more. Eventually, they're going to collapse the dollar, and we're all going to have central bank digital currency social obedience score. So if you're concerned about FTX, you should be more concerned about NATO forces, which are the bankers' army. The bankers' army. Because it's one world order, it's one world bank, it's one military policeman for the world, it's one clandestine services for the world. Forget Ukrainian, Russian, that's a psychops. That's as goofy as the FTX story. They've got scapegoats galore for the Ukrainian. We have no idea what's going on there, people. You're not going to learn anything using our fake news system. Did the media educate you that Jose Menendez got out of Havana, Cuba in 1959 at the same time that Jose Perdomo, the killer of John Lennon, escaped? And they're both friendly with the Batista regime, allegedly, and that Frank Sturgis becomes their partners, and he's working for Fidel Castro, who had to be friendly with the Batista regime. I mean, Fidel Castro went to the University of Havana. Remember the Maine? Remember the Maine in 1898? In February 1988, a battleship was sunk in that port of Havana, killing 266 seamen, American Navy seamen. And then what does America do? They establish a military Navy Marine base 45 miles by 45 miles square at the east end of Cuba, meaning there can be no Bay of Pigs invasion, there can be no Cuban Missile Crisis without the express permission of the banks and the United States Navy and Marines, because they control Cuba. They control it economically and they control it militarily. Don't you get it? Cuba is a perfect example of the United States of America. Our economy is based on whatever the banks decide. When they want real estate prices to go up, they create liar loans. They create no adult supervision. They have people who don't belong in the financial services industries making, no documentation loans, liar loans, where you just make up the numbers. We had that. And then we had the dot-com bubble, and we had the credit crisis. Remember what were they called? Credit default swaps, put and call options, which the banks reneged upon. They're not going to pay out on their loss. That's like a casino paying out millions of dollars to a blackjack player. Never going to happen in real life. They're going to invite you to leave their show. That's the world you live in. So there's no free markets. There's no real price discovery. The gasoline prices are fake. The price of gold is suppressed. It's fake. It's artificially low. And the price of cryptocurrency is whatever the banks, a bunch of knuckleheads in a conference room decide. They set the price. They told you that with Eddie Murphy and his movie film that came out for the holidays. What was that called? With Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd. He's plugged in. He's a Canadian who's involved with the Hollywood clandestine service, social engineering, right? Living on 7708 Woodrow Wilson Drive, where Natalie Wood, whose real name is Natasha Zakharenko, she's living at 7708 Woodrow Wilson Drive off Woodrow Wilson Drive. Who's Woodrow Wilson? New World Order, right? Council of Foreign Relations. Who's? Doesn't believe in democracy, he believes in one world order. That's Woodrow Wilson Drive. That's where Natalie Wood lived. Right, that's where Robert Wagner slept in her bed when she was 18 years old, in that home. A swimming pool where she never learned to swim. And then that's where Cass Elliot lived. And that's where Dan Aykroyd lived with Donna Dixon, in that home. And then Barbara DeAngelis. Only Hollywood actors can live at 7708 Woodrow Wilson Drive off Woodrow Wilson Drive. It's a CIA home. It was an OSS home when they built it. It's a CIA home for the last 70 years, just like Cielo Drive. And I'm not talking about the murder scene. I'm talking about all 10 houses around the perimeter on all sides of that home. Above, to the east, to the west, to the south. All those homes are clandestine service homes. All of them. They're all built by RKO Radio Studios. That's Howard Hughes. That's Hughes Aircraft. That's Joseph Kennedy. That's John Kennedy's father built that murder property. Only they built it for clandestine, porn films and parties and surveillance activities. And you throw a murder in every once in a while. That's the world that we're living in. If you have a problem with FTX, you contact Doug Leone at 2800 Sand Hill Road, Sequoia Capital. He won't answer your questions, but he knows all the answers. He knows everything about Sam Bankman-Fried. He knows everything about little Caroline Ellison. He knows exactly how much money Sequoia Capital sent over there. He knows everything about SoftBank and or BlackRock if they were partners. It doesn't matter. I can assure you that Sequoia Capital is #1 in the world for starting new companies. If you can create Apple Computer and Google and Cisco Systems and Zoom and YouTube, you don't need any help from BlackRock and you don't need any help from SoftBank, okay? The person who's running that show was Don Valentine. And now that person is Doug Leone. So, hey, they're both from the Bronx. They're both from the Bronx. As is KKR. They're from the Bronx too, with Jerome Kohlberg. All right. They're in the same building as Doug Leone. All right. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.